5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
How about we do it again?
6, 7, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think I followed it.
Okay, let's try one more
I
time.
definitely
Ready?
I can move you. Making review. Making review.
Say 6,
6,
5,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You have found your way to episode 152 of Rank and Review. This is the top 30 horror movies of the 2000s, part 2. My guests this week are Jason Dubray and Lee Beckmann. I'm your host and friend, Canadian Larry Parsons. We are going to rank from our 20th to our 11th picks for the best horror movies of the 2000s. And we're going to do a full-length review of both the Mothman Prophecies and Sam Raimi's Drag Me to Hell. Beware of spoilers, beware of coarse languages, and if you would like to give feedback, send your emails to ranknreview@gmail.com. It's ranknreview@gmail.com. Check out the website at ranknreview.ca. As always, thank you so much for listening to the show. I hope you enjoy it, and let's get on with the show.
We were just making sure there was adequate closet space.
Good. This house is yours if you want it. We'll take it. Okay. It's just me.
You didn't see it, did you? You didn't see it, did you? You didn't see it.
See what?
She knew. She was drawing angels.
What are you doing here?
Somehow between 1 and 2:30, I traveled 400 miles. I've got no memory.
Past few months, people have been coming up to me and reporting strange things.
Weird lights, strange phone calls.
Hello? Who is this?
What do you do when someone comes into your office and tells you they saw this in their backyard?
My wife saw some. Drew pictures. Just like this. Who showed you this? You know what that is?
One day I started hearing voices. The voices became messages.
It was right here. All I could see were these 2 red eyes.
I met him.
You met him. He said,
Do not be afraid.
99 will die. 99 will die.
All 99 are believed dead.
you're reading my mind, are you? What's my end?
Not a lot of people still talk about the Mothman Prophecies, and I get why it didn't necessarily land and that people weren't lined up around the block about it. But as much as it doesn't necessarily maybe pay off with this idea of a monster, a creature, or whatever the hell the Mothman is, what I kind of dig about the movie is that it's a movie about the mystery itself, or about the idea of a mystery itself, and the idea of becoming obsessed with said mystery, and that for whatever reason this entity, this problem, this supernatural being, the only way to deal with it is by not dealing with it. It's one of those things that the best thing you can do is just not pay any attention to it, which is of course why people obsess over it, right? It's kind of an interesting idea. And I think that the movie, like, it had a real uphill battle, in that Richard Gere can be really good, but a lot of the times he feels kind of flat for me. And he's pretty public about the fact he doesn't have much respect for the horror genre. For him, it's all about the metaphysical stuff. And whatever's going on inside his head is much more interesting than the non-expression that usually shows up on his face. But happily, Mark Pellington is an intensely visual director. And he has a really good gift. I remember saying this about The Shining, how like every scene in The Shining, it feels like someone just left or is about to enter the room. Like there's a lot of open space. There's just something uncomfortable about every scene. And it's one of these cumulative effect movies. There's not a lot of like trailer moments, I guess you'd call it, you know? It just kind of chips away at you slowly and slowly. And yes, it culminates in a big memorable bridge disaster, which is based on a true event, although it happened in the 60s. They modernized it for the story here.
Inspired by a true story as opposed to based on a true story.
But my takeaway is not the bridge sequence, although I think it's very well done. My takeaway is just this idea of this imponderable, frustrating mystery that can only drive you mad. The deeper you look, the more it breaks you. Strong performance from Laura Linney and a really strong performance from Will Patton and a lot of the supporting cast, because that's what you need. I remember thinking about in the Nouveau Godzilla they had David Strathairn as this military convoy leader who's like calling the shots in Godzilla. You need somebody who can really sell any piece of dialogue to play that role. So all of these people that are going to tell us these inexplicable, bizarre stories, who seem frankly embarrassed while they're telling the story, they have to be credible. And between Mark Pellington's direction and those stories, I got kind of sucked up into the romance of the mystery of the romance of the mystery, if that makes sense. It didn't make my list. It didn't make any one of my lists. But much like the other movie we're going to talk about, I think that the Mothman Prophecies was unfairly dismissed. And this is me shouting it out. Give it another day in court. If you're a connoisseur of horror movies, I think that this has something to offer the patient viewer. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong. I actually think Mark Pellington is actually a very, very good director, not only with the pacing of story, but even just how to shoot a movie. He knows how to use the frame very, very well, with both with things in background and foreground. And I find a good suspense director will master that and show that throughout his movie. Even like the opening shot where Richard Gere is startled by something and he moves back, but the phone kind of comes at you a little bit at the other side of the frame. Like, those are just well blocked shots. You can tell you're in the hand of a craftsman. And I love that whole sequence, if you will. Transition cuts where Gary loses his wife, and then it fades to him alone at the Pittsburgh University, and the color palette of gray that is washed over the film. Like, he knows how to use color and sound very quickly and very well to establish a mood. And yes, it's a movie that is hypnotic at how it chips at you. I also think he made the brilliant decision to jettison the whole alien aspect of the story. If you know much about the Mothman Prophecies, it's seen as like a UFO abduction story, and I think that was
like
smart to get rid of it.
Myth, it kind of sprongs out into all sorts of different directions. Some of the sightings were on a military base, and it was near where there was supposedly some experimentation done, blah 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 blah. There's also stories about Mothman being sighted all over the world, but they're mainly dealing with at least the basic arc of the 60s sighting cycle. And it's interesting because it's almost like a social media event where it catches fire, and one person sees it and then starts talking about another one, another one. But this was long before the age of social media. And that the tragedy on the bridge took place, and that put an end to the Mothman Prophecies. Is that because the Mothman was a real thing, or is that because a real tragedy arrived and they had something to talk about?
I can understand why some people get frustrated with the movie, because it, like I said, it does ask more questions than answers them.
And it's walking. It never runs.
But I think another thing that it really taps well into is, once again, it's examining the culture of fear. what happens when a mysterious force comes upon a community and how that community reacts to and how they're terrified. To me, in a lot of ways, Will Patton and his wife are the movie. Like, Will Patton has had really good performances in mediocre films for
It's been his career.
Yeah, for a long time now. I think of Jonathan Hensleigh's The Punisher, and what a frustrating movie that is, because as a sort of like young dumb, action revenge movie, some of the acting in it is really, really top-notch good. And Will Patton is one of them. I mean, that death scene he has with John Travolta is really well acted by both of them in that scene, but it's really to do with how good Will Patton is. And here's another great performances in The Mothman, where you see this character's journey from where we meet him, where he's very much seduced into the culture of Mothman, and he's broken, and he goes all the way to the acceptance, and then to where he passes on. I think his arc is the most intriguing out of all of them in the entire movie. So I think Will Patton never gets enough love. But I do like how Pellington decided to approach, what happens when this mysterious force comes across this small community and how it affects everyone. And I think that's a terrifying idea. It was explored in Zodiac, and it's also explored in here. And that's why I think it's a really strong, solid horror thriller.
You've been very quiet, Jason.
I've been very quiet, yeah, because I just wanted to say something which makes it sound like I don't like this, and I do like the movie, but you announced like the ones of the 6th movie that we were going to do, sending a message, and then I went, oh geez, I need to find this. I was having trouble finding it, and then I was about to order it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just watched this like a month or two ago, and I had completely forgotten about it.
Oh wow!
So that's not high praise, unfortunately. And I was like, oh yeah, well no, I've seen this movie, and why is it that I was I'd even kind of forgotten about Will Patton's part in it, and I kind of lean to Laura Linney giving the best performance in the movie, but Will Patton is very good, and I didn't have any notes about him, and now that it's something where it's like jogging my memory, and it's like, oh yeah, like I mean that whole section is great. It's freaky, particularly at the beginning when Richard Gere loses time. And like what is going on? And it's like you keep knocking on my door every night. Well, we've been following him. He's never been to this town before, and like there's creepy stuff going on, which is great. An early problem I have with it, and maybe this is just I don't know, too picky a criticism, was the Deborah Messing character. She's pretty much no character at all. She's like this trophy wife he has.
She's more,
and then she dies, and she's a plot device.
She's a literary device, yeah.
Yeah, and she's a very, very good actor that deserved, I think, something more in there.
Richard Gere disagrees with you. In the interview I saw with him, he was just going on and on how she was like the launch pad for the movie. Like, her death and what she sees before the death is what starts the ball rolling. And I agree, it's certainly not what it feels like in the movie.
It's a plot device, though.
What it feels like to me, it's not one of those things like we talked about with The Descent, where the movie has to start with a tragedy for the main character, and then they have the supernatural adventure. For some reason, that's a thing that happens again and again and again. For me, it's about the hole in his life that is punched by the death of his wife. He fills with the Mothman. The hole in Will Patton's life that is empty because he lost his job gets filled with the Mothman. And then you could say that's an interesting psychological component. But, and this is a creation of the movie, but I like it. Most of the actual eyewitnesses of the Mothman who speak words to them or looked him right in the eye are most of who are the casualties on the bridge. And so, that's where the idea is, he was predicting these people's fate. He's presenting himself to them was he's this harbinger of death. And any vision of the Mothman is basically a shortcut vision to the death. And that if Richard Gere continued down this path, it would, maybe not on the bridge, maybe not that night, end up in a death. But instead what happens is it ends up with him saving a life.
Yeah.
57 people were supposed to die in that bridge collapse,
And-
according to Ingrid Cole, or the Mothman.
Indrid Cole, yeah.
And once he saves Laura Linney from it, when they get the count, it's 56. And it's not a fucking coincidence. And you can feel the goose flesh go up on the characters. And the first time I saw it, it worked for me too.
Oh no, and that's where it ends, and I think it brilliantly ends.
Yeah. I just am struggling with why, and I feel like with these reviews, am I in a bad mood or something, or what's?
Well, you were
why
watching
am
a lot of
because
movies,
this is a movie that I should love. I mean, it has the psychological elements, the creepiness that I talked about with. It's my type of horror movie. Why can I not get excited about this film though? It kind of sits there for me. And I think the acting's there, and the Deborah Messing thing is a really minor criticism.
I respect the patience of the movie.
Yep.
I get
me too.
like that audience get bucked off because we don't really get our showy monster moment.
Yeah.
We don't really get
Which is wise. I mean, that's
physical showdown of any kind. It's just like it asks a bunch of questions and then it stops asking questions and it leaves you with it.
Yeah.
And like I get that's a tough pill for a lot of people, but they put money in it. They got Richard Gere and Laura Linney, and like they cared about this movie, and you don't see it. A lot of it is they're just too worried about that box office. No, we need something fucking crazy to happen right away. We need a reason for these people to stick around.
I mean, there's a few cliches in here. There's the character who says, "Don't look at this any further," or whatever, and of course he does. And
but at least it echoes the theme. Once again, like I said,
we have the false.
The more you look at it, the more it fucks you up. And
he starts to look crazy to people when he thinks that politician is going to be blown up and
wrecking his life.
And it's like, but I mean, every like the longer he stays in Point Pleasant, the only thing that's working for him in Point Pleasant is his relationship with Laura Linney. Yeah. Everything else is just making things worse and worse. Same thing with the Will Patton character. It just gets worse and worse and worse until he finally he's finished with him and he's done. So, but there's no real answers to it, and it asks a lot of its audience.
Yeah, I will.
And I like that. I mean, I like all the stuff. It's just what am I missing? I think it's more about me than anything else. Cause
probably, yeah.
No, I don't. I mean, I
once again,
how could I forget about it?
Once again,
it's like the Mothman got a hold of me or something where I've lost time and I've watched this movie.
You had an encounter with the Men in Black.
The Men in Black don't want me to.
There's an ugly sense of nihilism that this
nihilism?
Nihilism. Excuse me, nihilism that this movie celebrates, because like just some of the concepts that it's advertising are pretty dark, and like good does not triumph over evil in this story.
No.
So,
the way for good to win is for good to walk away.
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty horrifying concept.
Yeah. And the idea that it showed up apparently around Chernobyl before the Chernobyl accident, and it didn't die, it wasn't defeated, it just went somewhere else.
Yeah.
All of that's kind of creepy, and it's not handled in a in spite of a few cliches, it doesn't feel like it's being handled in a Hollywood way at all.
Yeah,
no,
like
really.
I do not feel spoon fed. The closest, you're right, that it comes to is I think it's Alan Bates who plays the character.
Yeah, that's right.
Who steadfastly refuses to cooperate until it was time for him to drop the exposition, and then he dropped the exposition and vanished from the movie. So yes, that, and yes, the main character having a tragedy in their life. I don't know what that thing is about, but it is always a thing.
And then they have to make things even worse for this person afterwards. Yeah.
Something terrible happens to them, and then they get this supernatural adventure.
But there's such an air of creepiness in the setup when he goes traveling and he's in this town, and I like a lot of that stuff, and I don't know why. As you said, it's well made, the bridge sequence, and it has to be in there. Like, that's the true story in here. But I was not... I don't know what they could have done to improve it, but I was just not excited about that as much as... It felt very big, but...
I like that it's an incredible story in the true sense of the world. incredible.
Yeah.
And I like how that's handled both by, like I said, the supporting actors and especially Laura Linney when she's just shaking her head and she just like how do I investigate this?
Yeah.
I cannot fucking stand this. This
Yeah.
is crazy.
Yeah.
And like you sympathize, you can't arrest the Mothman, but these people are gonna call you and say fucked up shit's happening, and
how can you help
and
them?
what can you do to help them? And as it turns out, the best thing to do is not.
Yep.
It's different, and again, like it does not seem like another factory stamped out of the studio's horror movie.
No.
They were trying something. It was a big swing.
A lot of love went into this movie, and I think it's a well-made, supernatural X-Filed.
The critics were split, and it did not do well financially. And I just think it deserves a second day in court.
There you go.
And I think I was watching it, and then watching this, and then I watched The Exorcism of Emily Rose around the same time, and so it's got two Laura Linney horror movies, and it was news to me what you said about her not really respecting the genre that much, and maybe there's more bells and whistles, I guess, in The Exorcism of Emily Rose.
And again, another quote true story.
Yeah, another quote true story, and that one stayed with me, and this one obviously slipped my mind. And
fair enough. But I know it seemed
it's
like
worth
a weird
watching,
choice, but I just wanted to have the conversation.
And it's kind of like with Frailty for me. You want more people
absolutely
acknowledging it, and it is worth seeing, and I think people should check it out and form their own opinions. And like a lot of the ones we're talking about, I want to like it more than I actually do.
All right, we're breaking into the top 20. Mr. Beckmann, where do we sit? What's your 20th ranked?
Well, this is also a tie.
Okay.
And I wanted to give a sort of lovingly shout out to the found footage genre that really started to expand its wings in this decade, much in thanks to the Blair Witch Project. You've already mentioned it, that it already made your list, so I want to expand on it a little bit more. The first of the tie is, I think it's a New Zealand film? Or is it
Australian.
Australian. Lake Mungo. Lake Mungo really surprised me. It's a film I hadn't even heard about. I think I actually got it from the library at one point. I think someone had sent, either I'd read about something, but I knew very little about it, and I was blown away how just creepily atmospheric this movie was. And it has all the good elements that Blair Witch has, where it's just a lot of oral storytelling in a lot of ways. It's really the younger sister wants to find out the mystery surrounding her older sister's disappearance at Lake Mungo, and in this process of this mystery finds out some dark corners of her own family in the process. But this is all it's all performance. Like, here's a horror movie. Like, if you look at this list, there's a lot of extreme horror movies on this list with their violence and sexuality and nastiness. And Lake Mungo, even though there's a twist that is a little bit adult per se, there is not a lot of profanity. I don't think there's a lot of violence in this movie. I don't think there's nudity in this movie. It's just...
We're told about the events more than we've even shown them.
Yeah.
And it's still...
more psychological?
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
Nice.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Yeah. For a lot of these films that are bathed in this ugliness, and just like Lake Mungo does it naturally.
There's humanity to it.
There's humanity to it. And it's really...
two things: the storytelling and the performances. And in this day and age, where I think we're getting less and less in that with our film, I want to championship that, and that's something that's really done well in found footage movies. So to me, Lake Mungo represents the best of those skill sets.
And what's it sharing the spot with, though?
It's sharing the spot with Rec.
Oh.
Rec was a great found footage zombie type movie where when I first saw it, and I think I actually saw it with you for the first time, where I had my hands to my ears and my hands to my cheeks.
Yeah.
Originally, it was not on my list. I couldn't believe it, but then I thought, I can't.
Oh.
Rec is a terrifying zombie movie, found footage movie.
Nice.
Once again, it has those qualities where it has more characters that I like than dislike. Even the character that we're towards the end was maybe supposed to be like, oh, you idiot. You still feel for her.
You feel bad for what happens.
You feel for her.
Yeah.
Rec is awesome.
Have you seen Rec?
I haven't. No.
And some of the
I think we're up to
sequels
like 10 movies that I need to.
The sequels are very.
see.
Some of the sequels are very good too.
I think, I love the Rec franchise. Again, I think, like I said to Jason when he was talking about The Mist, my only problem with that selection is how low it is on your list.
Yeah.
Rec is, I think, a fantastic movie.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Did you? Where did you watch it originally? Because you said you were just so.
I think I actually might have watched it at your house.
Yeah, maybe the rental might have been the other house.
Yeah, I think so.
So for it to not be in theaters is,
I've
to have that kind of reaction is amazing.
It's experiential horror.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're just dragged through the experience of these people, and you can't look away, even though kind of want to.
Yeah.
And they did an American remake, which was completely unnecessary. Quarantine. But,
yes, I've heard of Quarantine. Yeah.
Rec. If you're gonna watch one of those two movies, definitely
watch Rec.
Yeah. But Lake Mungo, man.
Agreed.
Lake
I've already
Mungo.
been there. I feel like I've made my case on Lake Mungo. And Jason hasn't seen it, but
I second the emotion.
I get the sense that if I had seen it, it'd
might
probably be on all three lists. Just, but you two are. I trust your taste, and you're selling me on this. So
20, Mungo, Rec.
What's your number 20?
This is where you're going to fillet me alive because this is likely a top 5 for one or both of you.
Okay.
28 Days Later, directed by Danny Boyle.
Hold them down. Hold them down. All right.
This is such an important. This is like Shaun of the Dead, one of the most important horror movies of that decade. And I've heard you comment that it brought back the zombie subgenre. And so I was fully prepared for it to be maybe top 3 or somewhere. And I rewatched it, and then I actually watched the sequel that we'll be hearing about it too. And I don't know why, but this time around, the sequel worked for me more than the original.
Okay, that's the most controversial thing you've said so far.
Yeah. I think it is, and I'm going to get ripped apart for the next little while here, and I'm fine.
No. We'll just go for a walk.
We'll go for a long walk. I love 28 Days Later until it was like what I was saying about how the stuff that people are gunning for with a movie like this is the action sequences.
Right.
I was fine until we go to the military base and Cillian Murphy turns into the Terminator, and it's not that I didn't like it. I enjoyed all of that, and Danny Boyle is such a great filmmaker, and he could make me sitting drinking a cup of tea interesting. It was just such an original piece, and we talked about how awful Vanilla Sky is with Tom Cruise running through empty Manhattan.
Right.
There's no image that stays with me more than Cillian Murphy walking through empty London, and that works so much better than.
Well, look, Danny Boyle's one of my favorite directors, and I'm a huge zombie guy. So it's gonna rank way fucking
I know.
For me.
I'm glad you mentioned it.
The sequel, I think, gets unfairly maligned. I think the sequel is actually quite strong, and it's great to watch now because you got like Idris Elba and fucking Hawkeye and what's her name?
Was it Rose Byrne?
Rose Byrne. Yeah. Like all of these people who at the time that movie was made were just up and comers. They're now fucking huge. So that's interesting. But Danny Boyle for revitalizing the horror genre and for that digital approach. That digital shaky camera, which I understand split people. Like a lot, if you don't like shaky camera,
it can be over the top a little bit too much, but I liked it. I mean, I know I'm kind of ruining the order we're in here, but 19 is 28 weeks later. So that's how close they are. for me.
Whereas I put 28 Days Later on the list. I didn't put 28 Weeks Later on the list, although I very much enjoy both films.
Yes, same with Larry. We will be talking about 28 Days Later again.
And I totally understand it. It's just me.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. You did surprise me. Here's one rare pick from J.T. Petty, 2008, a horror western called The Burrowers.
Yeah.
I'm going to give special mention to Dead Birds from Alex Turner as well. It's just a little bit rougher around the edges than The Burrowers, but both of them I think are very good at being both a western and a horror movie. It will tick the boxes for both fans. It's ugly. The Burrowers is definitely another one of those bitter little pills. But it's a creature feature featuring, like, you haven't seen this kind of monster before.
Yeah.
It's got a killer performance from Clancy Brown.
Yeah.
I always love Clancy Brown.
Yeah.
And it doesn't get the respect that I think it deserves. I think the first time you watch it, it's almost so dark, both literally and figuratively, that it kind of leaves you feeling not sure about the movie.
Yeah.
But I've come back to it, and I just think it's such a meal of a movie, and again, hard to compare to other things. Like The Burrowers isn't like, if I think of other horror westerns like Bone Tomahawk or something like that, like that's another great horror western, but it's really nothing like The Burrowers. This is its own thing, and I give lots of points for a movie that I can't compare to anything else. So The Burrowers. Again, you might need a Simpsons episode or something as an antidote after you watch it. But I liked it a lot.
I have it on my honorable mentions, but it was one of those, I can't believe it's not making my list.
Right.
I love the monsters in The Burrowers. They're just the idea of them, and I don't want to say it here, is pretty terrifying.
And the tools with which they have to deal with them seem inadequate.
Yeah.
You know,
you actually showed me this movie, and thank you for doing that. It really did sneak up on me. It does leave you with a dark, bitter taste in your mouth, but at the same time, it's a terrifying movie, and I do think our villains are very scary.
I feel like I should have been in touch with you during that decade, because these would be second nature. Because now
I'm to borrow half of my collection.
I think, but I'll be like carrying up
that you should leave with today. It is The Burrowers.
Because I like westerns. I have problems with creature features sometimes, but I really like westerns.
It is a creature feature.
It's definitely a monster movie.
But it sounds like a very unique one.
It did make my list if I was one of those. Number 19. I think my love of werewolves probably made this list. There are 2 Neil Marshall films that are on
I saw this one coming.
Yeah. I can understand people calling this movie stupid, but I think that it is joy through and through. It is Predator with werewolves, and that is Dog Soldiers. This film came out of the gate and showed us, hey, Neil Marshall is awesome. It's silly. It's a silly movie, but Dog Soldiers is great. I cannot pound the pavement with this movie enough.
I believe it might be the first movie you and I ever reviewed for Rank and Review.
Oh, is it? Oh, so, wow.
There you go. It has
a
very special movie.
Sentimental.
Yeah. Parsons, I'm sure there's a couple movies you're like, that's a Beckmann pick. So, Dog Soldiers is awesome. We've already talked about it in Rank and Review. I don't want to say anything else.
Have you seen Dog Soldiers?
I haven't.
Okay.
Get on it.
Same director of The Descent.
Yeah.
Have you seen The Descent?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, fucking good.
Yeah. I'm going to be like, what?
I did.
Yeah, you're about to punch me out here.
Like,
no,
part of me wanted to put Dog Soldiers on the list. The Descent we'll be talking about eventually, of course. But I knew that Beckmann would have me covered for Dog Soldiers. So, it's super macho. It's got like cheese. A little bit of cheese to it, but just the right amount to keep the flavor. It doesn't quite overtake the meal.
Yeah,
you said Predator, so
exactly. But that macho attitude that we're invincible. There's nothing we can't handle, except for these 8-foot tall fucking werewolves. All of a sudden, maybe we can't handle that.
Yeah.
So it's fun and it's intense. But I think that The Descent kind of upped his game. Like this is the movie where you saw, this guy he's got some potential.
Yeah.
And The Descent's where he reached that.
Yes.
So.
I love its black humor's heart in Dog Soldiers, and where it didn't have that as much in The Descent. Where The Descent is
there wasn't a lot of.
The Descent is a straight-laced horror movie, where Dog Soldiers is like, here's this McDonald's Happy Meal served to you.
And It was funny, The Ruins and The Descent. I got those titles mixed up just during the decade too, even though they're completely different films.
Oh, yeah.
And, yeah, and so 19 was 28 weeks
Right,
later.
you said.
I
guess
I love the cast. I don't know why there's more characters. It's like the world that's now happened is more developed. I really like Rose Byrne's performance in it, and
one of the best opening sequences.
That's so cool. Robert Carlyle. It's such a, you understand it, but then you're like, what a cowardly thing, and this is gonna come and bite this guy in the ass, and it does in the right way. Because I'm thinking like, this is Danny Boyle's connected to this franchise, Robert Carlyle, so naturally he'll be the star of this movie. No, he's not actually the star.
Kind of starts as our main character.
But then we cannot follow this guy.
Psycho on us.
And who am I thinking of here? And Jeremy Renner, before really Hurt Locker or anything, as far as I know, is in this, and it's a really nice role for him. He's pretty easy money, you know.
It reminds me, you borrowed the Richard III to show to your class.
Yes, yeah.
I was thinking, how your class is going to take seeing Iron Man have such a grim death.
That was good. They did not expect that, and like it was like but even more so than the reveal with Secret Window,
right?
Because I know it's coming. I'm so excited about this. They're shocked by the sexuality in the scene, so they're kind of like and then so like you know.
But to the same extent, I can see a modern audience watching this movie and saying, "Hey, Hawkeye's in this," and then when Hawkeye gets like unceremoniously blown off the screen, you're
it's like, what?
What just happened?
Our male protagonist is gone.
Yeah, his death hurts. It's like,
he's the savior for all these people.
So no, I get why you like it.
A great female lead. I mean, you know, in a zombie movie that, you know,
I like it.
I think Rose Byrne is kind of an underrated actor. Right? She shows up in a lot of stuff, and still not a lot of people know her. Mostly from the Damages show she did with.
Well, I usually take it as a good sign when I hear someone interviewed and I'm like, you're British, huh? Okay.
She's Australian.
Pardon me. But I had that.
Yeah, I had no idea. She played an American once, and I had no idea.
In 19th position, I did say I wanted to represent some of the Asian extreme films from 2008, and Miyazuki Ochaya, I don't know if that's right at all. That's how I'm going to pronounce it. Shudder? This is a movie of the Me Too movement, as far as I'm concerned. Again, way ahead of its time. This is a story about a woman who is wronged and who has to take supernatural revenge.
It's a Thai movie.
And the brilliance of the movie is that we don't know that until we watch the movie. It's a traditional movie in that like some spooky stuff is happening to this guy and his girlfriend and what's going on. And the more we find out what's going on, the more the supernatural stuff is scary, but it's motivated, and by the end of it, you're almost on Team Ghost.
Yeah.
It's interesting, and it also has some really indelibly strange images in it, and the whole idea of they using the photography, the main character's a photographer, and these images start showing up in his film, in his pictures.
Yeah.
And that's what he's starting to use to figure out, what is this? What's happening to me? And as typical with ghost forms, and this is familiar, but it's well done here, it clearly has something to do with the sins of the past.
Yes.
If you haven't seen Shudder, I encourage you to check it out.
Well, you'll be shocked to know that we will be talking about that movie again. Everything that Parsons says, I agree with. I don't want to. I'll talk about why I liked Shudder so much. I'm happy that it's on your list. I think it's great. So I agree with you. Nodding my head.
I think we're going to have a special segment next time I'm on where I talk about all these ones that I should have had on.
Dubray plays catch up on the naughties.
Well,
a little bit.
You see, I became so jaded during that decade.
Oh yeah.
Don't see the American remake, by the way.
What's the American remake?
It's called Shudder as
well.
well.
Okay.
But,
make sure I don't.
I'm talking about the original.
Yes. Well, you said it's a Thai film, right?
It's from Thailand. It's great.
I will find it.
Overseas. It's
Okay.
All right.
Okay. At number 18, I had the thrill Joyride Wrong Turn.
Oh, okay.
Elijah Dushku's sort of redneck horror thriller. It's short and sweet. Some of the sequels are actually quite good for straight to DVD as well. I'd say I highly recommend Take Out 2 and 3. It is really one of the well-sequenced horror films of that decade. There's a sequence where they're high up in the trees, our heroes, and then our villains figure this out. And they start burning the trees, but they also start jumping from tree branch to tree branch. and our heroes have to make the decision of we got to get out of this tree, so they decide to fall, and it's painful. They also discover
quickest way to the bottom.
Yeah, they also discover the lair of our villains, but they don't want them to notify our redneck psychopaths that they're in their lair when they themselves show up, and so they have to witness the murder of one of their friends while they're hiding. I think that is a terrifying sequence. It's short and sweet, so we don't have time to kind of go, wait a minute.
Yeah.
But there is a sequence in this movie that I think is really well thought of, really well shot, when they're being chased high above the trees. I think it's pretty brilliant. I mean, yes, you could argue it's a Texas Chainsaw Massacre ripoff, but I like it a whole lot, and that is Wrong Turn.
Have you seen Wrong Turn?
I haven't.
Okay. For me, it's a guilty pleasure movie. I didn't make my list, but I always felt like big heart for you for saying it, because I always feel like I'm almost guilty when I say I kind of like Wrong Turn. It's a hill folk movie, but it's a way better made and has a way better cast than it kind of deserves.
And maybe that's why. I mean, this isn't like a brand new title to me. I know the whole story, but I have so many of these ones that I think are really important from the decade. I need to either review or see for the first time, and it got mixed in with a lot of films that look similar. Yeah. But what you're describing sounds like something I would like. I mean, and I like when as we were talking about Tremors, I like some of the sequels. Right. Shockingly enough, I mean, these sequels are probably better than the Tremors sequels, but
they're really cheaply made. Is the problem?
They are.
Yeah, they're really cheap. The first movie has the most polish of any of them, and it also has like Jeremy Sisto is one of the
mention him, but okay.
Julian Richings is one of the bad guys, great Canadian actor, and like they didn't need to get these people for these parts, but they did. Mm-hmm. They didn't need to spend that much care into the sequences that they did, but they did. Yeah. In the end, the movie is still essentially a crazy hill folk jumps out and kills you movie.
But I like those movies.
It's not reinventing the wheel. It was sort of refreshing to see Jeremy Sisto in a likable character role.
He's often not
so used to seeing him play this sort of smug or psychotic mental illness character that to see him as really this good-natured older brother character that, spoilers, when he dies, they're like, no!
Eliza Dushku, who's the main character, she's a good actress, she's attractive enough, and she's got that really sort of smoky vodka cigarette voice. I've always just kind of liked it.
Like the Lauren Bacall-ish type of thing.
It's, again, I don't want to oversell it, because it is it's an is what it is movie, but it's better than it has any business being.
Well, that's why it kind of surprised me. Like, I saw it in the theater on a cheap Tuesday, when may it rest in peace. And I walked out kind of going, that is a lot better than it should have been.
I love that. I absolutely love that.
And like I said, the big stand-up to me is the chase sequence in the trees.
Great.
You're up, brother.
Okay. I feel like I have two things happening here. I have a persecution complex. Okay. Every time I mention one, I'm like, is this the one that's going to drive him nuts?
Yeah.
And I haven't seen a bunch of these movies. Okay, so that's where we're going with this. Here's one of the ones we might be talking about. 18th is Hannibal, directed by Ridley Scott.
Interesting.
I find it's gory, it is creepy. Most of it is faithful to the novel. I read the novel first before seeing it, and I wasn't quite sure how they were going to do it. The stuff that I thought was there's no way on earth they're going to do, they actually did. There's other things that I think they should have done that they did not do. Yeah. So it's not a perfect film. There's some flaws, but it affects me every time I see it. And the performance that affects me the most is Gary Oldman. It's a semi. Like, the guy's a chameleon. I mean, he is such a chameleon, and I knew it was him and it was his voice, but it's another one of these ploys where he's not mentioned in the credits,
right?
And then they throw him in like the Kevin Spacey 7 thing at the very end. He's covered in all the most horrifying makeup, as accurately described in the novel, and it's such an unpleasant character to be around for each and every scene. That worked for me, and the climax is grisly with Ray Liotta.
I don't know why that makes me
Ray Liotta's brain, and he deserves it because he's such a misogynist. But I mean, if anybody deserves it, we can debate the morals, but in the universe of watching a movie, he is such a horrible person to Clarice Starling.
I feel bad for him.
You almost don't feel bad from this, maybe part of the problem. But Hannibal Lecter is cooking Leota's brains, and he's eating his own in a walk, and he's eating his own brains.
Didn't he actually tell him to shut up at one point too?
Shut up, and like he has his baseball cap on to cover it, but we've seen he's cut a little bit here, and then like revealing a great dish, he takes his and opens his skull and his brains. It is,
for me, the problem with Hannibal is the source material. I think that Ridley Scott directed the shit out of it.
He did. I liked it better than Gladiator, which was the year before.
I think Julianne Moore does a good job considering the betrayal that is done to the Clarice Starling character, and that's how I will characterize it. Like,
you mean in the book? In the book, because they went in a different direction.
I agree.
When I say the problem is the source material, that's what I mean. I get why Jodie Foster didn't want to do that. I just made one of like the best female protagonists in horror history. And I don't want to piss all over it. Thanks. But that was the book. Thomas Harris got it in his head that his meal ticket was Hannibal Lecter, and maybe he was right about that. But
I think so.
As we discussed when we talked about Silence of the Lambs, the heart and soul of Silence of the Lambs is fucking not Hannibal Lecter.
It is Clarice Starling.
And losing sight of that hurt the movie enough.
Well, Buffalo Bill's the real villain in Silence of the Lambs. This one it's called Hannibal for a reason. Hannibal Lecter is front and center in this.
Hannibal did better as a supporting player than he does front and center. And for me, I was disappointed enough in the story that was being told that it couldn't make my top 30.
There was a lot of style to it. I like the Italian sequence. I like that actor who plays the actor who played the Italian cop who gets so corrupted, and the fact that and when, because I was like, in the book they're not going to cut his bowels. No, they cut his bowels and hang him right there, and it's just like the artwork, and just to pull that off so effectively. So I get what you're saying about the source material, and are you happy they changed the end?
I am, but
it's still,
again, once you've gone that far, you might as well.
But they still hint at there's this attraction between Lecter and Starling, which probably does not make a whole lot of sense.
I feel like only Thomas Harris wanted that, but in respect, it's his world.
And there's a really creepy last scene with that little Asian boy who's on the plane with Lecter.
David Mamet.
David Mamet, that he threw that in. Mamet and Steven Zalian did the screenplay, the writer of Schindler's List. I mean, it's...
But again, if the source
so many talented
material
people
is fundamentally flawed, I mean, it's really hard. It's really
but will you give, like, Gary Oldman...
Well, once again, Ridley Scott and all the people involved did the best they could. I agree with you that the original source material is the problem. To me, Hannibal Lecter is far more terrifying caged up than he is running around, because even in Red Dragon or Manhunt or whatever version you read or see, the fact that someone this evil and this smart still manages to cause so many problems just from his cell.
He's a threat in the cage. That to me is what makes Hannibal so terrifying. So when he's on the loose, he's just another serial killer. It's the problem of mystery too. I find like the less we know about them, the more we extrapolate ourselves. Once we're told this is why, and they go further into it in the prequel, he just gets less and less frightening to me with each movie, unfortunately.
I kind of got the sense, because I could appreciate what Harris was going for, where, like, in the book, spoilers for the book, Hannibal and Clarice Starling run off as lovers together.
They're on the lam together.
Yes. And I thought that's a bold choice.
But a wrong one.
But, well, I don't know.
But she's treated so badly by the FBI that she's given the way that it felt like a manipulation of her. Like she's under his spell somehow, and that's why she goes off with him. That part I don't like, but I do like how much abuse is she taking from the men in the FBI, which is still in this. They have that.
If you were going to do that, I think you needed a better A to C. I kind of get the impression that he had this story because there was a long period of time before the publication of Silence of the Lambs to Hannibal, and I kind of got the impression that he had most of the story for the longest of time, but then the book editor says, "Okay, we need this date. We run out of time. Here we go," and he sped up with the climax. If you're gonna have Clarice Starling, one of the most entertaining, strong-willed female characters of the last 24th century in Pulp Fiction, and she leaves with the most diabolical man. You need that transfer to at least be believable, and I didn't believe it in the book. I didn't believe it in the movie.
Well, they didn't do it.
They didn't do it in the movie,
but even
the Lecter's sacrifice, I guess, is what they were focusing on. That he was willing to sacrifice. He just could not bring himself to kill Starling. Now, I don't know if that's consistent because he is a sociopath.
Yeah.
But
I'm not saying they couldn't have gotten away with that choice, but I didn't buy it. Right. And they needed another go through the draft.
I think we've done pretty well.
Yeah, there's a lot. I knew this would be a big talking point. This one.
No, it's not on my list. I have respect for it. I really don't like the way they took the story. In 18th position, A Warm Christmas Adventure, about a bunch of family who gets together with their kids to celebrate Christmas, and their kids go fucking crazy. It's called The Children. It's directed by Tom Shanklin. It's from 2008, and it is devastating. Like, I think I said when I reviewed the movie for the podcast, like, I think it's really easy to imagine killing somebody in the heat of the moment to defend your children. Like, I can get my head around that, right? But your children attacking you, trying to kill you, and being put in a position where you have to kill your child to save yourself, that is some next level fucking horror. And setting it at Christmas makes this extra layer of holy shit. And like right away, there's a really early in the movie, one of the adults suffers a really grisly injury, and it's clearly intentionally caused by the kids. But right away, you're just like, oh man, this is like 2 or 3 beats uglier than I expected it to. Again, like I was talking about with Eden Lake, these British movies somehow manage to press a nerve in a way.
Yeah,
it's just like, you can see these kids are going to turn on everyone. And as the parents, they don't want to believe it. And I believed that. Because, like, I wouldn't want to believe it either, right?
There's something scary about children becoming evil. And that's what works for me about the only film adaptation of Pet Sematary that should exist is with Gage and what happens there. I mean, it's horrible. He ends up looking like a much scarier Chucky doll or something at the end. Like, that's that sweet little boy, and that's the actual actor having to do this.
But the interesting thing for me with the children, it's not the creepy kids thing that works for me. I mean, if you're into the creepy kid subgenre, it'll work for you. But it's the psychological damage. Even if you do manage to fend them off, what's left of you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you're both parents, I'm not. So, I mean, that's probably striking that nerve. So,
spoiler shocker, we will be talking about the children again on this list. I don't want to say anything else. I'm nodding my head in approval.
You haven't seen
and it's on my list.
The children is terrifying.
All right, so number 17, Mr. Beckmann.
Number 17, we've got some Canadian content.
Yes.
Yay! I come from a family of words. Words are important. I also love me some zombies. I think, is it Neil MacDonald?
Bruce MacDonald.
Bruce MacDonald.
Thank you for correcting for me. I think this is a film that does not get enough love over in America. I love the crap out of this movie, and that is Pontypool, a zombie virus that started by a radio transmission. Excuse me. I think is a pretty novel idea. It's really just a couple people in a room in a lot of ways as a low budget horror film. I guess the bias in me that it's Canadian also sort of made it on the list. I love me some Pontypool.
You'll be hearing from me again on Pontypool. Brilliant.
Love it.
Absolutely brilliant. So
you'll
excited.
You'll also be hearing from me about Pontypool. So just a minor correction. Having read the book series as well from this, it's actually a zombie virus that the infection is in our language itself.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's not that the broadcast is causing the infection per se, but the concept here is by informing everybody of what's going on, by trying to make sense of it and explain it, he's basically spreading this thing like a wildfire.
And it's a complicated thing to describe.
Yeah. Well, and again, it was one of those things that I'd heard that McDonald was going to do the book, and there was talk about him doing more, but McDonald is he starts projects and abandons them with great effort. But the idea of it is strong, and the fact that it is so Canadian, it is set in Canada. And I remember reading the book thinking, that's going to be a tough sell.
If you Google...
I don't know if they're going to make it work, but their secret weapon was Stephen McHattie.
Yeah.
Stephen McHattie made it.
Oh, he's so good in it.
We'll talk about it again, but solid choice back then.
Yeah, if you Google Pontypool, you'll actually get the town in Ontario. So
there you go.
Yeah. It's a real place.
What's your 17, brother?
It's on to me. Yeah, sorry. All right. The debate is this a horror movie or not? And maybe that's why I don't have it higher, but I really respect the hell out of Donnie Darko. Yeah, by Richard Kelly. I also like The Box, and I would do a shout out to The Box, which was just destroyed. I mean, people hate The Box. Very, very heady stuff that he would get into about time travel. This Jake Gyllenhaal, this kind of made him a little bit, I think so, especially in indie circles. I think the first release did really, really bad, but it got saved somehow. And then there's the director's cut version. I've watched both versions. For some reason, I like not the director's cut a little bit more. And I hear others.
Everybody agrees with this.
It's
the director's cut is less good.
Like Roger Ebert liked the director's cut more. I know it sounds like Lee likes the director's cut more.
I like the original cut.
Agreed.
Oh, original cut. Okay, yeah. So I like the original cut. Yeah.
Musical changes, and some of the stuff was nice to know, but in the end, we didn't need to know it. And maybe we didn't know that until we saw it. But
I don't regret seeing both.
Yeah.
But and for this, I watched the director's cut just so that I would have both versions in my head. Gyllenhaal is creepy at points, like when he is sleepwalking, he's in this trance, and that rabbit is freaky. I mean, that's a really scary character, and we think it's his imaginary friend, but as things happen, I like a lot of it. The question I kept wrestling with, I just could not have it on this list. Is it actually horror? There's horrific things happening. I like that it points out the hypocrisy of suburban 1980s. That era made a lot of sense to me. We had Mary McDowell as his mom reading It, which is kind of a nice little Stephen King tie-in there. And Patrick Swayze's character, to me, is... Because he'd come into schools with these guest speakers promoting these programs. Still happens to this day. And the truth is revealed that this guy is like hardcore pedophile. And there's...
Well, that's the thing where I think you can say that it becomes a horror movie when you think about it.
Yeah.
Because by doing all these things and closing the circle and that timeline, that pedophile is still free and living in the world.
Yes.
All of the stuff that he undid, or like he prevented this death of this one girl that he loved, but a lot of bad stuff is still
there.
Happen.
Like people don't know about this guy.
Fate is not going to resolve itself in this really clean way.
Yeah.
I don't consider it necessarily a horror movie, and that's why I don't consider it. I didn't put it on the list.
Yeah.
But I
understand that.
I'm a Donnie Darko defender.
Yeah.
A lot of people kind of like sort of the revisionist history of it. They liked it the first time, but the more they thought about it, the more it was pretentious and stuck up. I get that idea of it, but it's an ambitious science fiction movie.
And it's grown on me more and more. I mean, and when they talk about the ideas, and I like most of the stuff with the school, because often in schools, we've talked about this, where it can be a little bit of a caricature of what actually happens. And Donnie Darko's such a smart kid, and he's talking to Noah Wiley, who's his science teacher, and there's this point where he says, we have to stop this conversation because I could lose my job.
Yeah.
You don't get that in a lot of movies set in a school.
And there's truth to it.
There's truth to it.
And also keep an eye on the background. Seth Rogen is one of the
he's a bully. Filmed in Vancouver, I think.
Gyllenhaal's sister,
Maggie Gyllenhaal plays his actual
sister. She's got like 10 lines in the whole movie, but there she is. It's an interesting movie. I wouldn't tell anyone not to watch it, but I don't think I'd count it as a
sci-fi cult is where I would put it.
Yeah.
Per se. But it, like interesting choice, bold choice.
It creeps me out in places, and that's why it's on there.
Like some of the ideas presented are creepy, and the image of the rabbit, and
they go to Evil Dead too for the Halloween movie.
I'm not in my head. I more sci-fi than horror for me.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay, well, for my 17th position, I've been leaning a lot on the British horror. I'm noticing as we're doing this list. And I could have put 2 of this guy's films on there. I only did 1. So I guess maybe honorable mention goes to Creep, starring Frankie Potente, Run Lola Run.
Yeah.
But I'm actually going to give it to Christopher Smith's 2009 film Triangle.
I knew it was going to be on there.
Yeah. Melissa George plays a woman who really has a crazy, stressed out life. And she needs a vacation, so she goes for a nice little boat ride with some friends of hers, and everything goes completely to shit.
Yeah.
It starts with a crazy storm that comes out of nowhere, and then them finding an abandoned boat. And every revelation that follows from that is, I just don't want to give it away. It's one of those movies that the less you know about it going in, the better. This is maybe closer to the narrative of sci-fi, although there is some grim violence throughout the movie. But again, it's another one of those movies that I feel like people missed. Yeah. So definitely check out Triangle. And if you like a monster movie, I mean, even though it's totally a guy in a suit monster movie, that Creep movie definitely has some.
Yeah, I've heard of Creep, but I hadn't heard of Triangle.
Yeah. So. Worth your time.
I didn't put the Triangle on my list because I just thought you would, so my bases are covered.
Like, it'll be covered.
I'm not in my head. It's really, really good. It's really, really good. It's really, really good. It just didn't make my list because I sort of thought Parsons was going to do that for me.
I'm sorry, but all these movies that you haven't seen, I feel like you're not.
I feel like I failed.
You didn't fail, dude.
No, it's just different experiences.
Yeah. Nothing to contribute.
No, I'm happy. I want to watch all these. That's the thing. It's great. I mean, every time I walk away from these podcasts, I'm like, I'm going to quit my job and I'm just going to hold myself up and just watch movies all the time like I did in my childhood.
16th position.
16, we've already talked about it. It is the Thai horror film Shudder. Once again, I saw this overseas and knew nothing about it. Went in and went, wow. It's a mystery where we don't quite see where it's going. I think in the Me Too movement, a lot more people would be like, yeah. But it's a creepy, atmospheric. A lot of the movie takes place at day too, which is interesting. It's not, boo in the dark, even though it has its fair share of that. It uses a lot of the tricks of photography to provide a lot of chills. Special shout out goes to the frequent. At one point, our hero takes a rapid sequence of photos because he thinks that the ghost is in, or something is wrong, and he takes a whole bunch of photos quickly and then develops them and soon realizes that he is not alone and that the ghost is trying to tell him something. That sequence is terrifying in itself. We've already talked about it, so I don't want to spend much time. Shudder.
Yeah. Have you ever, like the old days with a picture and then just something strange in the background?
Yeah.
I mean, that's such a creepy feeling, and I'm glad. I mean, those types of movies can't come out anymore, I don't think, because of digital photography and people.
Also, there's a sequence on the highway where the driver's going, and then the ghost shows up going on by, and I went, yikes.
Well, and I don't want to spoil it for you. This is like subtle scare, but like I was realizing is like all of these images are pictures he's taken, so this thing is around him. Mm-hmm. And just because he's not taking pictures, there's no reason to think it's not around him. Like
it's almost buried
all
constantly
the fucking time, right?
Yeah.
So like that idea that there's something there with you all the time. You can't see it, but you know it's there, and you can go wherever you go. It's going to be right there with you.
It's a paranoia.
There's a couple of twists and turns in this movie that when our lead character figures it out, all the other things that he's been talking about make sense, and you just go, damn.
Yeah. Anyway, check it out.
I think you two are selling me on this decade that I pretty much dismissed.
Shudder's really good, man.
What's your 16th rank, brother?
16th, prominent director in film, Zodiac, directed by David Fincher.
It's.
I think I was expecting something different when I saw it in theaters. And rewatching it, it grows and grows on me. And there's some really horrible moments, and the actual crimes and how they're enacted, even though you know what's coming, they're just awful. And it showed kind of the innocence of that time which was still kind of prominent despite Charlie Manson and all
yeah.
that in California. It was still very open,
You don't need to lock your doors.
good old American, but
Yeah.
that it changed, and I'm just thinking of the scene with who was the guy that Brian Cox plays, and
No, the
yeah,
TV
and when they have him call into the show live, and then that voice changes.
But is that
and
the
that's
itself?
that's not, and there's so many mysteries and false starts, and there's a scene that bothers me every time, even though I think it's kind of a false trail or whatever. Is with that projectionist and Jake Gyllenhaal,
Charles
and it's like,
Fleischer,
yeah,
the voice of Roger Rabbit, giving
Yes.
a fucking terrifying performance.
and like he just turns, that's actually my handwriting, and
Yeah.
you're like, get the hell out of this place. And this has a basement in Northern California, and
Which is a rare
there's,
thing.
there's all this stuff. Such a talented filmmaker, and I don't have to sell anybody on David Fincher, but there's that scene. Elias Koteas is, the problem was it involved 3 different counties and 3 different sheriffs, and they weren't communicating with each other. But when they're all together interviewing the guy who likely is the Zodiac killer, or at least the film goes with that.
Makes a hard argument for it.
Those tight shots that was
Yeah.
cut together of the reactions.
I'm nodding my
That
head
is
in
so
approval.
good.
Here's the thing,
And
brother.
great cast too.
If this list was the best movies of the noughties,
Yeah.
this movie would be on the list and would be on the list high.
Yeah.
I had to make this list for horror movies, so I didn't.
And you're not
include
sure it's a
Zodiac.
horror movie.
Well,
Here's the thing, and this is an unpopular opinion. I think Zodiac is David Fincher's best fucking movie, period.
Interesting.
A lot of people will say Seven or The Fight Club, and I say nah. I say Zodiac. I would argue that it's the greatest procedural movie I've ever
It is
seen.
so good in
it's
that way.
really
Yeah.
good.
Like, and the use of the special effects, difficult, hard, complex special effects, for no other reason than authenticity.
Everything.
Like, I have so much respect for the movie that I
Yeah.
kind of wish that I put it on the list, but I just decided to make a hard line. I'm
Yeah.
doing a list
Yeah.
of horror movies.
Yeah.
I would understand, like I said, Requiem for a Dream being on this list, but I didn't put it on the list. It's
Yeah.
horrifying.
Yeah.
And Zodiac's horrifying. It's also interesting. It's an almost 3-hour movie, and
Yeah.
all the violence is done about 45 minutes into the movie.
Really?
Yeah. And it's psychological after that.
Oh no, there's lots
Yeah,
of scares.
yeah,
There's
scares
plenty of
after,
suspense.
but- Yeah.
But as far as visceral violence,
See, it never feels like a 3-hour
No,
movie
no,
to
no.
me. I mean, it
No,
just
no, no.
flies.
Because it's awesome.
It flies
Yeah.
by.
Because
You want
it's
more
awesome.
time.
Yeah.
I wanted more Robert Downey Jr. playing this alcoholic. I mean, maybe a little bit too close to home, but this alcoholic journalist, and
I do not disagree with your choice. Just because it's not on my list doesn't
Yeah.
mean I
Yeah.
disagree with your choice. I fucking love that
Yeah.
movie. I think it's his best movie, and I'm starting to think it will be his best movie.
Yeah.
But
I've got nothing but love for Zodiac. It's in my honorable mentions.
Yeah.
Like Parsons, I kind of took the hard line where it's more a detective story,
procedural,
more
yeah.
procedural than it is a horror movie, serial killer. That saying, there are some pretty terrifying sequences, like nail
No joke.
biting.
No joke.
I just had to be brutal.
like the two, the couple.
I'm
I
nodding.
mean, my heart's in my
head.
throat in those scenes. I mean,
I'm
and I've seen
nodding.
it how many times? I mean, I
I'm
just can't
nodding
believe
my
it.
head.
Yeah.
I am almost with Parsons, where
Yeah.
it might be Fincher's finest hour. I'm not quite there yet.
Still a little bit more Seven, better than Fight Club, I think.
Well, I think it's a stronger movie than Seven. I don't know. Like I'm glad it's on the list. That you talked about it. It's in my honorable mentions.
It's more subtle than Seven.
So let's talk about My Sweet 16. And it's not really a tie. I have an honorable mention, but it's about some troubled ladies, both of these. The honorable mention goes to The Loved Ones from 2009, starring Sean Byrne. It's a really, really solid as a rock Australian thriller horror with this girl kidnaps her dream prom date and brings him home for supper, and her dad's all on board for this. Both of them are just as fucked as a Thanksgiving turkey. Like they are crazy.
They are
and
not
this poor
healthy.
son of a bitch is tied to a chair and put through an ordeal.
Clearly does not deserve to be there too. Like he's kind of
He's just a dude.
He's not like
he's a nice dude. Like I just think
he's not.
So that was my honorable mention. But the
It's
one
not
I'm
Ray
gonna-
Liotta.
The one I'm actually putting in 16th place is from Lucky McGee, 2002 May.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, yes.
Yeah.
this character study, and when we were talking about horror movies as tragedies, Angela Batiste just gives this utterly heartbreaking performance of this lonely woman who's been mistreated by every authority figure in her life, and all she wants is to be loved. All she wants is to be loved. To the point, if she has to fucking make a lover, she will build one Frankenstein style, right? And that's not what the movie's about. It's kind of more about where the movie goes, but the whole thing is about Angela Batiste and this character, how she just breaks your heart, and you just keep watching her make worse and worse decisions. And all she wants is to be happy. All she wants is to be loved. And it's heartbreaking. It's clearly made for $2. It is a lo-fi, low-budget, super indie movie, and I goddamn love it.
I've heard you talk about with affection, and I didn't get to it, and I remember
I can echo once again. There was a couple of reasons why I didn't put it on the list. One, because I kind of thought you were, so thank you. I was on the Terror Table a while ago, and we talked about best female performances in horror films and how they've been missed, and this is definitely one of them. She is amazing as the lead. I kind of took it more as tragedy. I mean, yes, there are horrific things. It is so sympathetic to its lead antagonist.
Protagonist, antagonist. She does some bad shit. She does some bad shit.
Anti-hero wouldn't be a good term for.
But your heart goes out to her. If it's not necessarily that you're sympathizing with her choices, but you're just like,
dude. You're so on her side for the first half of the movie that when she starts making these tragic turns, you put your hand to your face and it slides down your cheek. But it's so good. Her performance is so good.
It lacks polish. I guess I'd have to be honest and prepare people that it looks and feels like a low-budget movie, because it is. But if you can get over that, I think it's a pretty safe bet.
And it's once again one of those Jeremy Sisto performances.
That's right.
Where he's kind of sympathetic for a portion of it. At one point, his true colors are kind of revealed, but
you understand someone being creeped out by May.
You
totally
do.
get how she's attractive on some level, but some of the shit that comes out of her mouth, you're just like, oh dear.
Let's leave now. So once again, I acknowledge May didn't make my list, but a special shout out to the female actor's name again?
Angela Batiste.
Angela Batiste or Bettis?
Bettis.
She's very, very good, and I'm sorry to say that she hasn't quite had the leap that I thought she would.
Oh, I got all excited when she was going to do this TV version of Carrie. I was like, May is going to play Carrie? And then I watched it.
But
I didn't watch that.
Given the right material, she's like,
because I saw The Rage and I thought that was enough.
So I let me some May. Just didn't make.
What's your 15th rank, brother?
My 15th. We have also talked about this movie, and Parsons, I gotta say thank you for showing this to me. It's The Children. I think being a parent, it's still terrifying whether you're a parent or not. But the whole concept that this being that you unconditionally love turns on you and you don't understand why, and you have to make this choice. It's either them or me. It's so terrifying.
Spoilers, one of the mothers just relents. Like she just says, okay.
Yeah.
And it's credible.
I feel like I do that. I mean,
there's a tobogganing scene as well that you see coming a mile away, but you're still like, no. I also love the teenager because we don't quite establish the rules of this universe.
Is she okay? She seems okay. But is she?
She's old enough where she's just getting out of the children phase, but still kind of she's still a child. So one of the storylines through this movie is she going to turn or isn't she?
The other thing is like how easily you could be seduced by, seduced is the wrong word, but tricked by these kids. If like Maya walked up and said, grabbed me by the hand and said, come here, I want to show you something. I'm hers, right?
For sure.
She's leading me to my death, then I'm going to walk to my death, right?
But you don't suspect that.
You're not seeing that coming.
The smile on your face.
The Children is a terrifying movie. I agree, putting it at Christmas is great. It's so solid from its concept alone. The execution is great. It's the toboggan scene that officially sells me on it.
Yeah. Check out the children, Jason.
Yeah, the children is scary.
What's your 15th rank?
15th rank. This is where the orphanage is.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I watched it again last night.
I felt bad not putting it on my list.
I watched it again last night because it had been a few years. This was another one I showed to students in a media studies class or something some years ago, and they would jump. There were things that are really freaky about it, but especially with this older woman with these Coke bottle glasses who claims to be a social worker and is creeping around this orphanage. But the whole idea is there's this woman has bought this orphanage, and she used to be an orphan in it with a lot of children with special needs.
She's trying to pay back.
And she's trying to pay back, and she's trying to open it up, and she's adopted a child who's HIV positive. And he doesn't know that, like the tough discussion comes up that he's adopted, plus he is sick, and he doesn't know that he's sick. But these imaginary friends have told him this. And
more than that he's going to be dead.
You're going to be dead soon because you can talk to us. Yeah. And it, as the layers of the onion get peeled over it,
that's
more and more, and it
sequence, dude.
But it's also so
heartbreaking.
It is so heartbreaking. It is so dark towards the end. I think maybe the only notch against it, but this is one, like my cold heart, I guess, is there's a really sentimental moment, and I don't necessarily want to ruin it for people. You know what I'm talking about. It was a big music Hollywood moment, even though it's a Spanish language film.
I think you kind of needed it at that point, though, because that movie's such a here's your testicles, I'm going to kick them.
Yeah, that's true.
I have such respect for that director, J.A. Bayona. He did that Impossible movie that everyone fucking ignored in spite of it being goddamn amazing. And I get that everybody had problems with that second Jurassic World movie because it had a lot of problems, but those are not easy movies to make. And like I will keep an eye on this director.
Guillermo del Toro believed him so much he put his name on it.
No, like the dude's talent.
Every movie he's made has been interesting, and they've almost all done poorer than they should have. Like his most successful movie is this new Jurassic World movie, and it's easily the worst thing he's ever done. So unfortunate, but thank you for putting on your list.
I really love it. I cannot envision a list. This is one I actually saw in the decade. I wasn't chasing after it. I'm not sure who told me about it originally, or if I found it on my own, but it was so good.
It's good, man.
I let the others elbow it out, but I didn't feel good about it.
Yeah. Well, once again, I'm nodding my head. It's in my honorable mentions, and it's like, oh man.
All right. My 15th point we have talked about as well. It's from Bruce McDonald, 2008, Pontypool, Canadian made, Canadian proud. Since we've spent the time on Pontypool, I will just take a minute on my honorable mention from Vincenzo Natali in 2009, Splice.
Weird.
I just rewatched it for the podcast, and I was reminded of just how fucking crazy that movie is.
Yeah.
It's like almost only could have been made in Canada for how crazy it is. So
here's where I'm stuck, because I sometimes look at it and it says 2009, and it says the release date was 2010, and so I took it off of the list thinking it's for the next decade.
I went by the IMDb credit.
The IMDb says 2009, but then I looked at the Canadian release date was June of 2010.
Well, I think it played in festivals before,
and that's maybe why it was 2009.
So, well, if it was,
you might be able to put it on the next list. I think there's a chance.
It is super weird.
Yeah.
Like, I get people being off-put. The first time I watched that movie, there's a potentially audience-losing sex scene between Dren and Adrian Brody, which I was just like, what is happening to my movie that I was liking so much? But I have to give it buco points for just how out there it is.
Yeah.
And it almost feels like a stepping stone that got Guillermo towards The Shape of Water. There's a lot of similar, like, it's Shape of Water's not as crazy as this by a significant degree, but there's a lot of similar themes in it. If you haven't seen Splice, check it out. But Pontypool takes 15th place. Okay. We've already talked about it.
Yeah.
Beckmann.
Well, once again, I gotta pound my Canadian chest, and any horror movie that wants to reference largely and I'm gonna boldly say it, the greatest horror movie ever made in The Thing. This movie is aping it, but it's also Canadian, and that is Splinter. Splinter is, and it's a low budget horror movie.
I didn't know that was Canadian.
It's Canadian. It was filmed just outside Vancouver. Basically, this couple stops at this gas station, and all of a sudden, this weird creature that tends to, much like the creature from The Thing, replicates. And they are trapped inside this gas station, along with, I think at some point the gas station is trying to get robbed. I'm impressed because it is a low budget horror movie with the amount of special effects in it, but they're trapped inside with this, and we never find out quite what this being is, if my memory serves.
It's and it's not the Thing in that it like looks like the person that it's taking. So like it just repurposes your body to do its business.
Yeah, it regenerates.
So you've got these weird corpsey things flopping about.
I was impressed not only with what they could get away with budget-wise, but just the fact that once again my heart was pounding for a good portion of it. And then I realized, Canadian, well, hey, eh? So on there we have Splinter.
I like it a lot.
And on my to watch list.
Shia Wingdam.
Sounds like I'll love it though.
Shia Wingdam is coming up in the world. He plays sort of the guy who starts off as a bad guy, but once the monster shit shows up, turns out to be a handy guy to have around.
Yeah.
And that's my only real problem with the movie is like the character types are absolutely like formula cut.
Yeah. It is a genre movie, and it has those stereotypes.
It's like they had enough to deal with making this monster movie look good on a low budget that they were focusing on the creature and the concept, and the characters might have taken second shift.
Yeah, I agree.
It's not on my list, but I do really like it.
Yeah,
I do really like it.
I like I said, if you're gonna ape The Thing, you've kind of got a special place in my heart, anyways. So,
but you have to like actually bring it.
Yeah. And I'm prejudiced enough.
It's like saying I'm making a shark movie to measure,
which lots of people try to do.
And I'm prejudiced enough that it's Canadian, so I'm like,
fair enough. Mr. Dubray.
All right, number 14 here. This movie actually scares me, and I'm surprised it scared me again. And I told the story on the 90s show about my first experience seeing it. It is found footage, and it's kind of considered to be the found footage movie of that decade, Paranormal Activity. I don't care as much for the sequels. I still watch them just to watch them. But my first time seeing it, I was alone in a house I was renting. I watched it at 11 o'clock at night. After the movie, I watched it it was Blu-ray, and I watched it. And as I was attempting to go to sleep, I did not sleep that night, I saw things moving just like in the movie. So it has its problems for sure, and I think time has made me second guess it a little bit. At one point I thought it would be higher on my list, but then I was going through some movies that I think are just ultimately better acted and have better stories. But I just have to go with like the emotional, like it actually scared me the first time I saw it. And it kind of gave me the shivers this recent time rewatching it for this.
But pass or fail on Paranormal Activity if you can get past the found footage, as I always say. Because if you decide you haven't liked it before you watched it, you'll probably win, is Mika.
Yeah.
The character of Mika. Lee's on the side that the character of Mika is not credible, and it kind of takes away from the scares. I've met that guy. I know this guy. I get people being frustrated and saying, well, why are you doing that? But I mean, the movie needs to keep moving forward, and B, I am not of the mindset that Mika is unbelievable. He's frustrating and he makes a lot of stupid decisions, but part of the horror of that movie is that I do believe Mika. I do believe that guy making that bad a decision in that scenario. And usually in horror movies, it's like, I've heard a noise, and we know there's a deranged serial killer, but I'm still going to light a match and creep down into the basement and see what's going on. No, it's not like that. It's like, he wants to solve this problem, and the longer he's not solving the problem, the more he becomes obsessed.
It's that male impulse to logical and to solve the problem. And the three of us live in the province of Saskatchewan, and we know lots of guys like that. So
I want to interject here. It's not that I don't find Mika unbelievable. I think I've also met people like Mika. It's that he became so unlikable for me that when I started cheering for the demon, to me, that was the problem.
Right.
Like,
and I never cheered for the demon.
I didn't have that experience
Oh,
either.
no,
so.
But
like-
that would be the tipping point. That would be the two.
So I understand if you got to that point. Then
So when I was on Team Demon with a T-shirt going "Go Demon Go," that's when I decided to go.
We'll talk about Paranormal Activity again. So,
okay. All right. I thought I'd be alone in that one.
Probably not from Beckman.
Probably not. No.
Look, I understand its place in the horror naughties. I had it an honorable mention. I actually like some of the sequels, but I was, like I said, I couldn't. By the end of that movie, I couldn't stand Mika. And a lot of found footage has the same problem where it has this character. One of the main characters becomes so unlikable that when you start cheering for whatever the entity or whatever monster it is for that person to get their comeuppances, because they're playing it so straight, it takes away a little bit for me. Yeah. And Paranormal Activity is a shining example of that. I get it. He's mansplaining a whole bunch of things, and it's a very believable thing. It's just, like I said, if I'm cheering for the demon at one point, you got a problem with me.
Mm-hmm. I saw that one coming. It ranks higher than you're going to like it, I'm afraid.
Sure,
but here it is.
Sure.
In 14th place, I had my second tie, and in true Larry fashion, it's tied to a director. Mr. Sam Raimi started and ended the decade with 2 fantastic horror movies. Everyone's pretty much agreed on Drag Me to Hell, it seems. Anybody who's seen it seems to think it's a really fun, goofy, over-the-top horror movie, as only Sam Raimi could bring us.
I'm in trouble.
But The Gift...
Yep.
From 2000 with Cate Blanchett and just a murderer's row of great character actors.
Yeah.
Probably my favorite performance ever from Giovanni Ribisi, and a completely solid supporting performance from Keanu Reeves in a time frame where his acting was super fucking shaky.
That's an understatement.
So they're sharing this position. I mean, maybe I'm biased because of how much I love me some Sam Raimi, but
how about Cate Blanchett, man?
Cate Blanchett,
she anchors that
in
film.
That movie. She's the heart of that movie, and it's not an over the top crazy like the way Drag Me to Hell is just like this enthusiastic tantrum of a movie. This is this very composed, very well written story, co-written by Billy Bob Thornton.
Yeah, I know.
Based on his grandmother, who he claims was an actual psychic. But anyway,
it didn't want to be.
It's fantastic, and between those 2 movies, it just shows the game of Sam Raimi for me. Like, they're both horror movies. That totally is different. All they have in common, and I think they're both awesome personally. So here they sit.
One of the 2 you're going to hear from me. Well, I guess you'll hear from me on both, but one of the 2 you'll hear from me again.
This is the first time where I went, "Oh, I missed one."
Oh yeah, The Gift?
I love The Gift. I've got nothing to say but loving things about The Gift. I'm going, ooh, maybe I should have thought of that one. It's great. Nothing great. Look, we will talk about Drag Me to Hell later. Obviously, I don't want to spend much more time. Yeah.
And you want to reserve your words on this till the review, then?
Yes.
Okay, fair enough.
Mr. Jacks, I was wondering if you'd made any decision regarding the assistant manager's position.
It's between Stu and yourself.
Stu Rubin, the new guy?
Stu's someone who's not afraid to make the tough decisions.
I'm perfectly capable of making the tough decisions.
I'll let you know as soon as I decide, okay?
Will you help me? Please.
Okay. We have an elderly woman asking for an extension on her mortgage payment. We would have to throw her out of her house.
We've already granted her 2 extensions. It's a tough decision. Your call.
Another extension is out of the question.
Where will I live?
I'm really sorry.
Never have I begged for anything, but now I humble myself
Mrs.
before
Scanish,
you.
please.
I beg you.
Please let go. Please let go. Security!
You shame.
So I sure do love me some Sam Raimi. So, I mean, I guess I can cop to bringing that to this. I am a fanboy, particularly of his Evil Dead universe, which this feels very much a part of. But I've always found Drag Me to Hell just to be a delirious and fun romp of a horror movie. And I just would like to know what the hell your problem is.
Wow, dudes.
Okay, to tell you how much I was excited about this movie, without watching it, I went and I bought the Blu-ray back when Blu-rays were a new thing, and it was insanely expensive.
Oh no.
I put it in that night, and I watched it, and it's unfair to the movie, I guess. That's why I watched it again for this. Is that I was expecting Army of Darkness, Evil Dead 2 type of a film, and it has moments where the action sequences are like that, but other bits are supposed to be quasi-realistic. Alison Lohman, God bless her. I don't know what happened to her. She did like The White Oleander, and then this. Is not Bruce Campbell. She is not Bruce Campbell, and I could not get behind, because I thought, okay, he's not doing that type of a movie. But then we have these big sequences with this gypsy who keeps reappearing long after she's dead. I don't know that she's terrifying. She's more of a cartoon to me. I mean, it's
that's premise.
Right? So is it a comedy? Or is it a serious horror movie? You've said that, Lee, that you think it's scarier than Evil Dead 2.
I'll make that claim.
I had trouble reconciling what he was trying to do with this movie, and the second viewing of it was maybe not under the best circumstances. With watching it while I was sick on a road trip from British Columbia, but I was watching it again. I was like, surely I was wrong the first time. I'm willing to say I was wrong about the first time, but I don't love it. I hate to use your catchphrase, but for me, it's fine.
Right.
It is not. It's not something I'm excited about. I really don't. Sorry, I really did not care about any of these characters. At any point, I didn't want to spend any time with them. Justin Long guy, there's nothing to that character. He's just the boyfriend.
This is Justin Long double feature, by the way.
Really.
And I'm impressed with how could you not be impressed with the sound effects and the sensory experience and the fight in the car.
Let me back you up. We need to talk the plot, because
let's do plot first.
We haven't discussed the plot.
Before we do this, I just want to respond. Okay, so I just want to get this straight, because there's just one fucking thing that I don't understand, and that is every single fucking word coming out of your mouth.
There were more than one thing.
And I'm stealing from the limey here.
Yeah.
I just couldn't disagree with you more why you didn't like this movie. But let's unpack this.
It's almost a remake of Thinner. The Richard Bachman, Stephen King.
It's a Faustian tale.
Don't mess with the gypsy. Our main character is forced to deny a loan extension to this gypsy.
Forced
woman.
but not forced, yeah.
What? It's the right decision. She has had this thing extended and extended. But she also has to prove that she's able to say no to a client, to prove to her boss that she's worthy of this. Anyway, she says no to this woman. It's the wrong woman to say no to.
Yes.
She has absolutely hilarious and brutal fight with this woman in the parking lot behind her work. And then she is cursed. And much sort of like The Ring we talked about, she's put on this clock. She's got to solve this problem before the demon fully manifests into reality and literally drags her ass to hell. And
it's the trip to the end that is really unnerving. Like I said this before, the Lamia is a terrifying villain. It is what the Lamia does to her.
This is where I'm going to part company with you a little bit, but yes, go ahead.
Yeah, like what the Lamia puts her through, even sort of the comedic stuff. Like it's just awful. It forces her to kill her own pet. It throws her against the wall. It scares her, by using shadows. All of it. All
of it we've seen in the Evil Dead universe, which is why I believe it's directly connected to it. I disagree with you. I mean, I think that Evil Dead 2 is much more funny than it is scary anyway. But I think that it's still more in the horror genre than this. This movie to me is Sam Raimi embracing himself at the most excessive. It's much closer to Army of Darkness Sam Raimi than it is to Evil Dead 2 Sam Raimi in that respect. She doesn't just get a little bit of a nosebleed. Her nose squirts a fountain of blood across the room into her boss's face. It becomes theater of the uncomfortable and its physical body humor a lot. She gets bugs vomited into her mouth. She gets like a formaldehyde, like embalming fluid poured into her throat out of the corpse of another person.
Yeah, the mouth of the lady. Like
over the top doesn't say it. Like that fight in the parking lot when her arm disappears down the mouth of this old lady, like, or she's gumming her face with her toothless. It's hilariously, ridiculously so over the top that I find it hard to take seriously enough to be frightened by it, like really at all. But I do think in the same way, jumps, but like that's a different thing.
But I was terrified of the Lamia.
And that's where I part company with you. Like, were you terrified of the thing that chases Ash through Evil Dead?
Not like this.
Because I'm at about the same place with the Lamia. I understand its service to the plot, and I understand what it does. And yes, Boo. He can deliver the boo, and he does deliver the boo. It's funny, we're supposed to be fighting with Dubray, and we're fighting with each other. But to me, it is Sam Raimi at his most gloriously over-the-top excessive. And he hadn't done this for a long time. There was the period where he wanted to be a more seriously toned,
that's for The Gift and Simple Plan.
That baseball movie.
One
for the Love of the Game or whatever the fuck it was called.
Oh I like all those movies.
But they're fine, but they're not these stylistically aggressive movies. And this is him going back to rolling up his sleeves and having a fucking ball.
I thought he held back.
And really,
he can stay with murder.
Please tell me where he held back.
There were places where I just didn't think he could go. I will hands down say this. This is probably the one movie that's rated PG-13 that has no business.
Because they didn't say
I guess some of the gore is was sheltered, or they changed the color. But the gag reflex on this movie is impressive. Even the unrated version where she stabs the kitty to death, it's just like, damn.
The one I watched recently.
Sorry, you were saying.
I believe.
What would you say? Where were you?
This is too clean looking. I mean, the Evil Dead movies came from kind of an independent spirit. This is too much in the studio system. I really think they could have gone full hard R with this. I mean, we're talking about a demon that's going to take this woman to hell.
What R Drag Me to Hell would be.
Yeah, I didn't find anything scary about this. I found it kind of gross in some places, but it's I would rather watch any Evil Dead movie or the worst scene in Evil Dead 900 times over than watch this one again. I mean, I really do not like this movie, but I softened on it. I don't think it's an awful movie. But I don't think it's anything special. I mean, I think is having a little bit of a resurgence right now. That this is one that we should have paid more attention to when it first came out. I just don't get it. I wish, and I went in with the spirit where I want to like this. I want to be my initial thing to be wrong. That I prejudged it, and I was wanting an Ash movie. And I really did not get that. The seance scene is ridiculous. It was tricks from
I love the seance.
It looked like it was tricks from a haunted mansion thing at Disneyland or something.
Carnival ride.
The thing that would have worked for me is if we found out that all these people were scamming her. If it was all an act and they were scamming her, I would have been on board with that. But this is all very, very sincere what's happening.
But ridiculous. Sincerely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And this goes back to Crime Wave era Sam Raimi, where he would just stylistically over the top and a story that's stylistically all over the place and crazy. There is this weird, almost Curb Your Enthusiasm uncomfortableness, with her getting humiliated and embarrassed in all of these strange situations. And like I say, the physical grossness that she's subjected to. And I just have this image of Sam Raimi laughing, he can't believe that he's getting paid to do it. Now you can.
She's a good sport about it. Obviously.
She earns her paycheck.
Whatever she got paid was not enough.
Not enough. I have nothing but amazing things to say of Alison Lohman in this movie. Justin Long, I even really, really love.
Really?
But Alison Lohman, where did you go? I guess she married one of the directors of that Jason Statham movie, Crank. who also made a Ghost Rider movie, and she's got kids. I miss you, Alison Lohman. You earned your paycheck with this movie.
Here's a line that probably means it's PG-13 is instead of R, and I don't think I think it's unfair to compare her to Bruce Campbell. I get that I'm being very biased here, but this is one where Bruce Campbell could have made this line work, and she does not. Get your filthy pig knuckle off my desk. And she would have these lines where she would call the corpse a bitch or something. And it was this big dramatic thing and there's a thunderstorm and they're in a grave, and it felt so false to me. It felt like she was trying hard.
I loved it.
And she's this doormat sweet character, and then all of a sudden she's saying these lines which felt out of character.
If she's Ash, she's Evil Dead 1 Ash, as far as I'm concerned. She's like not overly macho and bravado, and maybe those lines feel uncomfortable coming out of her mouth because she's otherwise such a meek person. She's driven to the edge of crazy.
But I didn't buy the transition. I mean, if she turns into, like, initially Ripley is not Ripley, she becomes Ripley, and I believe that evolution into the badass Ripley that she becomes, or Linda Hamilton in the Terminator movies. But I did not believe her.
For me, this isn't her blooming into her strength. This is, for me, anyway, this one guy's opinion, but her being slowly driven mad by the situation that she's in. So these outbursts, which are so uncharacteristic of her, are more about her reaching the end of her tether than her being a macho badass, a la Ash, for instance.
I didn't get that take either on it.
For me, she is by Sam Raimi standards in this ridiculous universe, a quote normal person who gets caught up in the insanity of the Evil Dead universe.
Yeah.
Right? And so she is rapidly just driven mad by it, as I think any person would be.
Yeah.
But where I'll steadfastly just disagree is that I love the topness of like the seance sequence.
Yeah.
And the very opening of the movie. This is a movie that opens with a little kid getting taken to hell.
Yeah.
So it tells you right away what it is, and that like there's no subterfuge here. It's not all going to be in her head. It's not someone playing a trick on her, right? Like this is demons are going to come drag her ass to hell.
Yeah.
That's the promise of the movie, and it's the promise it delivers on.
Yeah.
Now,
There's no false advertising with this movie.
Am I saying it's as good as Evil Dead 2 or Army of Darkness? I'm not.
Yes.
But I'm saying it was such a great meal for me, having not seen anything like this from Raimi since that time. It was, for me, just delicious.
Yeah.
You could accuse him of A, repeating himself, or B, just doing a movie that was easy. It would be like Fincher doing another serial killer movie. I'm sure he could, and I'm sure he could make a good one, but what would be the point, right?
Yeah.
I can see that argument, but I feel like if you want to have fun with this movie, you should be able to have fun with this movie.
He says that it was the best studio experience for him because they left him alone.
Yeah.
Like what he wanted to put up on the screen, all in its entirety, is what he wanted in Drag Me to Hell, and you can feel every single frame of love. Like this is a movie that he deeply cared about, and apparently it was an amazing experience for him. And you can see it. You can see the joy just jumping off the screen.
It feels alive for me in a way like his Oz movie just didn't.
Yeah.
Like I feel like he's having fun with it. It's not a job. This is him like having fun.
Yeah. And it was a small budget because of it.
I'm sympathetic to the viewer that would say that movie's fucking crazy because you know what?
It is.
Really,
I think I wanted crazier. I mean, and it's unfair, I guess. I have to judge the movie for what it is. I'm just mad about it. I really...
you want it to be better than it is, right?
For a movie like this, for me to have a reaction that's this indifferent, I mean, it just tells me it's...
I love the music so much too. That gypsy fiddle they play both at the beginning and it just jumps in and out of the movie. I love that sequence when the Lamia has attacked her, and then, but this is sort of the first time that we're seeing the whole scope of the creature, when like that shadow just moves across the room. And you can see it just kind of at different angles. Like that's such a terrifying moment. This movie is a beauty of sound and fury. Like that's another thing. I already mentioned it, but Raimi does sound so well, and a shining example is Drag Me to Hell, just with even with the creature sounds, the sounds of the body slamming against the wall, the juice spraying, all of it. There's something that really builds tension instead of the music.
I'll agree with you. And I mean, the earbud headphones I had in while I was watching it really captured how great the sound design is in this. But if the best thing that I'm saying about it is the sound design, I
don't know. I love that first fight in the parking lot. Is just insane.
Yeah.
To me, that's
and
insane.
Another nod
that's
to Evil Dead.
All stops
that
pulled
potential,
out.
Yeah.
Like the staple in the eye, the teeth coming out of her mouth. Like
they had a lot of stuff with the false teeth.
The level of
she goes through the windshield of the vehicle and gets back up. Like
the level of ick in that scene right away is like, oh man. And we're just getting warmed up. And if it's not your kind of movie, it sort of reminds me in a way of like Peter Jackson's Dead Alive.
Yeah, which I like a lot more.
But I like that movie a lot. But I understand someone saying that's
not
too
for
much.
me. It's not for me. Yeah.
I get it. I get it if someone has that reaction, and I would get that if they had it with this.
But that was an R.
Yeah,
that was a hard R. That movie. Right?
Which one? Dead Alive.
Rated.
Yeah.
It's as R-rated as it could possibly be.
Yeah.
But genuinely, I had fun with it because I wanted to, and because it was directly in my wheelhouse. And it did pay off. I'm surprised and disappointed that it didn't pay off for you, but
I'm disappointed because I want to have the experience that I'm in the minority on this one. I wish I had had the experience that you two obviously have had with this, and it isn't just a one viewing thing.
Yeah.
If it was more than if it was only once I saw it, like okay, maybe it was the bad day or something like that. But now it's more than once that I've seen this, and I'm kind of stuck in a more indifferent place.
That happens.
Yeah.
I keep on every 5 years or so. I keep watching Natural Born Killers so that I can agree with everybody else about how great that.
Which I love that film, but
it just doesn't work for me.
Fair enough. Okay.
Good enough. Mr. Beckmann, Lucky 13.
So at number 13, remakes started to become a thing in this time, and we've got 3 remakes for me on this list. This is the first of them. Also, it remade one of the greatest zombie movies ever made, and that is Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead. I have a strong suspicion this is not the last time it's going to be mentioned.
I'm going to mention it.
It was a runner-up for me, and it was with regret. I mean, I love it. It's so good. It is so good.
It does a lot of things right. I don't know what else to tell you. We've reviewed Dawn of the Dead on Rank and Review. I don't want to spend more time because we need to get the ball rolling.
I also have this on my list, and it feels weird to have a Zack Snyder movie on the list because honestly, as far as I'm concerned, it's this good movie.
Yeah, it is.
Like, I mean, Man of Steel's almost there, but not enough.
I would put Watchmen.
Well,
yeah, I mean, I think Dawn of Dead's better than Watchmen, but you're right. I will get over some of the problems I have with Watchmen.
But they had some guts, like remaking this. I mean, how could you possibly?
The smartest thing they did, James Gunn wrote the screenplay.
Yeah.
The smartest thing they did was like just try to make it a fun zombie movie and use the setting. If you're going to try and do the social aspect that Romero is, A, you're going to bog down this fun zombie adventure, and B, you're never going to do it as well as Romero. It's lose-lose.
Yeah.
So his approach and James Gunn's approach was dead on. I had such fun with that movie. So I have no argument with that.
Yeah.
Mr. Dubray, number 13.
Okay, talked about fun movies, and this is the one that I knew had to be on here, and I actually thought having it 13 would be, but it's higher than either of you have. Shaun of the Dead.
Right.
Such an important film. One of my favorite parts is Bill Nighy. I just love him in any movie, and when he shows up, it's like, oh, okay, that's the cherry on top of this Sunday.
Just relax a little bit.
Relax. Okay, yeah, this is gonna be.
It wasn't the joint. Oh, he's in it. Great.
It wasn't enough of him. But it was enough to keep me really, really happy. I liked the idea the everyman suddenly becomes the hero, and
it is one of the most rewatchable movies you can have. And pay attention to the background players.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the people you see in the background in the early scenes, we'll see again as zombies later on.
Yeah.
That little errand he does to the grocery store and back pays off beautifully when he goes back there. It's one of those things like, it's sort of like The Big Lebowski. I watch The Big Lebowski for my birthday every year.
Yeah.
And like on the 15th or 16th year, I noticed this thing that was like, wow, right? In 13th position, I'm putting another Asian extreme horror movie. I know you guys already know this. A Tale of Two Sisters. It was
Yay!
Here's one of those movies that just greatly overperformed for me. Lee sent it to me when he was teaching overseas. And in a lot of the, troubled child returning home, Wicked Stepmother, Big House, a lot of the stuff seems like familiar and you've seen it before, but I guarantee you, you have not seen this movie before.
No.
There is some indelibly horrifying sequences. I remember seeing the sequence where this woman's having a vision, or a girl's having a vision of this hag woman ghost creature floating just above the floor of her room. And as an adult person, I was watching it and I just felt so terrified. I was just like, this is crazy. It shouldn't work as well as it does. You can just tell. The director is Kim Ji-woon, and it's from 2003, and you just know this guy knows what he's doing. Everything is very deliberate, and there's a lot of stuff, like the movie just leaves you stuff to sit on. Like a really crazy, inexplicable thing will happen, and then the movie just moves on, unacknowledged. And sometimes that would bother me, but I was just so riveted by what was going to be around the next corner that I have big love.
In our first take, you talked about the kitchen scene there with the ghost
in the cupboard. Yeah.
Oh no! Like the only reason why this movie didn't make my list, because I thought at least one of you was going to talk about it, and I have no excuse for this film not to be on this list. It is great.
Yes.
There is a sequence involving a kitchen and a ghost hiding somewhere that even now thinking about it gives me chills. I think it's a great selection. A Tale of Two Sisters is awesome. I at the time had a secret crush on one of the sisters as well, so it's like, oh, she's so cute.
Yeah.
The twist I didn't see coming, and when it's revealed,
devastating.
A lot of the things that we've seen in the past kind of make sense as well.
Another one of our not so happy movies.
No. And they did make a remake called The Uninvited, and I encourage everybody to
don't invite you to see that.
Yeah, do not watch that.
It's like they were talking about the audience in a lot of ways.
But please watch A Tale of Two Sisters if you get your hands to it. It's another one that's not super easy to put your hands to. But
I wanted to rewatch it for this, so I'd be a little bit more clear in my argument, and I couldn't find it. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, feel good stuff.
I feel happy.
Mr. Beckmann, what is your 12th rank? We're getting close. 12th ranked movie.
It's coming. Well, I've got to start this with telling the story about how the first time I watched this, actually Larry Parsons sent me this copy because it hadn't come to Korea yet, which I was currently stationed at. And so I was sitting watching this movie in what's called a computer bang, a computer room where you go, there's like a plethora of computers, you pay for your time there. I'm sitting down, I'm watching the movie, and about halfway through, there's a terrifying sequence in the middle of the night, a thunderstorm, and our two heroes can't see what's really going on, at least underneath them. And a whole bunch of sharks are coming to get them. And then I turned around at that point and soon realized that the rest of the people in the computer bung had been watching the movie behind my back, and they were all sitting there with their drinks going, oh, you may say, oh, Bali, ah. They were all freaking out from what they have been seeing as well. So I have Open Water at number 12. It is the epitome. It is a shining example of great guerrilla filmmaking, where they just sort of shoot by the seat of their pants, and they are literally in it. Like, they are in it with live animals. They are in it in their environment. There's no, fake stunt work a lot of ways. Even the making of this movie is interesting to watch. I'm surprised that they haven't, the filmmakers have made another movie with Silent House with one of the Olsen sisters. They've never matched Open Water. It is just that good, and that terrifying. The fact that I left the computer room literally shaking, but also the people behind me.
It's such a horrifyingly believable scenario.
Based
There's
loosely
this
on
like
a true story.
innocent mistake is made on the boat as far as the count of the people going in the water, and that innocent mistake is fucking devastating for these two heroes. And that's it. I mean, the truth of the story is that people got mispounded off the boat.
Yeah.
They have to extrapolate what happened to them. Nothing good, but like several days adrift at the open ocean. In a lot of ways, this is the depiction of my worst nightmare.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're going to be talking about open water again.
I have two regrets in my life. Well, I probably more than that, but in this context, one is I didn't see it in the 2000s. And the other one is I could not, for the life of me, get a hold of a copy of this to see it for this podcast. So it remains in a question mark, but I want, because we talked about Deep Blue Sea, and I just wasn't on board, even though I laughed and laughed. But I want to see a great shark film. I want to feel that this fear that you have of sharks.
It's a real thing. It's a trigger for me. I'm just scared of sharks. Like in the real world, I'm scared of sharks.
This kid just got attacked by a shark the other day in Florida.
Yeah.
So yeah,
good attitude about it.
Solid choice, Mr. Beck.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
12th position, Mr. Dubray.
This is where the others.
Okay.
Yeah, and part of me feels like, maybe The Orphanage should be ahead of the others because it's the less Hollywood of the two. But to create a great ghost story when there have been so many ghost stories, to me, is a real achievement. And the production design, the cinematography, the direction, Kidman's performance, which you already said you think it's one of her best. That was the year Moulin Rouge came out, and most of the attention for her came to Moulin Rouge, where she was important to Moulin Rouge, but she is the other. The others is so important. Like without her performance, it may not have worked. And the plot twist, I figured it out. Like you were talking about some of the Secret Window and some of these other ones. I figured it out without being told ahead of time. But I still enjoyed the ride getting to that place.
I went to see Shawshank Redemption in the theaters, having read the novella.
Yeah.
So I knew
Yeah.
everything that was going to happen in the movie, even though they did make some changes. But the movie was good enough that it felt revelatory as I saw it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a similar vibe here. I think if you've seen a lot of haunted house movies, you're
gonna
probably going to figure out where this is going. But the journey is worth it.
And I wasn't thinking about The Sixth Sense with this movie, but some people might have been. So,
do you have anything else to say about the others? Are we interrupting you? Sorry.
No. I wanted to be quiet. I know it's a rarity for Beckmann, but
I thought you were angry or something.
No.
Just dialing through his phone angrily while we talk about the fucking others.
All right, you know what? I was secretly plotting ways to poison you, all right? So, there you go.
All right, well, then I'll go on to mine. And again, we just talked about it from 2003, Chris Kentis, Open Water.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what more I can say about it. Like, the feeling of vulnerability that they get, and some of the industry standard horror movie tricks that they use. There's a scene early in the movie, like a lot of times in these horror movies, the couple's not getting along very well.
Yeah.
The situation that they're in sort of forces them to realign.
Yeah.
But there's a kind of shocking sequence of he wants to have sex, but they're not connecting. But there's a lot of nudity in the sequence, and you're just like, you don't feel like it's needed. But it's one of these psychological things where if really early in the movie, they show you something that you're not expecting that seems like a little bit rule breaking. It gives you this feeling like, well, what else are they going to show?
Anything's going to
right?
Yeah.
It just kind of makes you kind of get ready, and it's so smart because by the nature of their production, they couldn't have the budget to show you the teeth and tissue of these shark attacks. Everything had to be implied and everything had to be character. But you spend that movie living in fear of this inevitable thing that's going to happen.
Well, I know you recently reviewed Seven Psychopaths.
Yeah.
And you have this scene with these two guys who can anchor a film.
And they're
killed in the first scene. And,
Yeah.
you're like, oh, okay, anything can happen in this movie.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like.
There's something terrifying about shark attacks where it comes from underneath.
Yeah.
So it's the whole looking in the water and seeing this thing come underneath you that's really horrifying for me. and Open Water exploits that to many terrifying ends.
I saw this with Zane Jansen and my wife. Well, at the time she was my wife. And when we came out of the theater, it was super hot. It was like 30 degrees.
Yeah.
And I had goose flesh.
Oh, yeah.
I was like traumatized.
No, like you're both watching it. It's not like the late at night paranormal activity experience I had. This should not be scaring you in either of these.
I saw it during the day, a Sunday afternoon, and I walked out of the computer room sweating, going, "What did I just see?"
Bravo, Open Water.
Yeah.
We're on 11th position, brother.
Okay, so once again, I thought I'd have a little Korean flavor. I also love me a good old-fashioned monster movie, and this movie, once again, almost no one is safe. That was something that caught me by surprise. So I have Bong Joon-ho's, I think I'm saying that correctly. Hopefully, if I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but I have The Host.
Oh, yeah.
The Host
Good
is
choice.
amazing monster movie. I've actually been on the same path where they've shot that movie along the Han River. I've eaten actually the sort of snail-like creature that it mutates. I've had it for like a snack. The Host is great. I have nothing but love. At one point, they were getting close to shooting a sequel because it was a huge hit.
I remember
both
that.
in South Korea and overseas. And I've seen the VH or the special effects reel they were going to use, and nothing has come of it. The Host is great. I think if you love monster movies, especially, you need to see this movie now.
I don't, and I love the movie, and it was a runner-up for me, and it was on this list for months.
Yeah.
And some other things knocked it out.
I like it a lot too.
Yeah.
The special effects, especially for the time, really strong. I like the design of the creature. It does have this weird tone inconsistency that a lot of these movies seem to have.
The humor's a
It's kind
little
of-
off.
yeah, that was my
while.
problem, I guess. Yeah.
It dips into absurdity a few times, but then snaps back into being a fun monster movie.
Yeah.
It's a little bit distracting in that way.
Okay.
Anyway, I felt guilty not putting The Host on the list. I do like it a lot, but there was just other things. I would have to take something off the list to put The Host on it.
Yeah, me too. That was the thing.
So I'm not going to fight you on it. If you're a fan of monster movies, like most people should be, Dubray, definitely it's a safe bet.
If it's if it's effective, then adolescent comedies are a hard sell for me. But when they are done super bad, or when they're executed well, then I will love them forever, because I know how difficult it is to win me over with that, and The Host is like that.
It is Jun Hong Bong is the director.
Right, and it tells you it was Kim Ji-woon.
Yes.
Sorry, I plead ignorance on that.
So
snippety, snippety, snippety.
Yeah, he did apparently like Okja. And
Right.
Oh yes, that's right.
Yeah. The little spoilers. There's a death in this movie that I didn't see coming, and when it happened, I was gutted.
Right.
Yes.
And
I know
especially
the one
since
you're
we
talking
spend so
about.
much time with this character, and usually the rules is, this person will survive. So when it happens, it's just like, oh dear.
Yeah.
So, yeah, The Host is awesome.
Solid choice, brother. 11.
I'm afraid.
Uh-oh.
I'm
You
afraid.
ready?
I'm afraid. Tim Burton's Sweeney Todd, Demon Barber of Fleet Street. This is actually before it was Ed Wood was my favorite collaboration between the two, and Sweeney Todd, just the challenge of putting that thing to screen, just on a musical level, it is impossible. And the fact that Depp is so good, and he goes full on. As I said, I like full on horrific villainous Johnny Depp. He has reasons to be the mass murderer that he is in this. Alan Rickman is terrific in it. It's actually one of his, I'm not sure how many years later he died, but it's one of his third act in his career roles that I think didn't get enough attention just because Depp's character was so big. Helena Bonham Carter is so good. She sometimes is kind of placed.
Her best performance, period.
It could be.
Maybe.
Yeah. I love it. I've watched it several times. It does not leave you with a good feeling at all. It's another, because in other Depp Burton joints, you're going to have some sentimental Edward Scissorhands type of moment there, where you're like, oh, okay, it was a little bit gothic, a little bit dark, but let's give him a hug. You know, you don't want to give this guy a hug at the end, and the fact that a child at the end basically gets transformed into this demon in some ways is just leaves you in a very unsettling place. So I the whole thing worked for me. It's one of my favorite movies of that decade.
Look, as far as the late stage Tim Burton movies go, like, it is really good. And like, it's gotten to the point where the combination of Tim Burton and Johnny Depp fucking doesn't mean anything to me anymore.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, that would be super exciting. Now I'm like, big fucking deal, right?
I feel like this was the last one where it was, because the Dark Shadows came after that, which I didn't completely hate, but it's not.
It's
like,
not
great.
strong. No. It's not strong. Like, especially considering the talent involved. But like, I like Demon Barber. Fleet Street. Yeah, I like it just fine, but I couldn't honestly find a place for it on the list. I am a Tim Burton apologist. I want him to be like the director that we once believed him to be. I even found a place for Sleepy Hollow in our 90s one. So
that's right, which I didn't get on board with as much as...
I'm a Tim Burton apologist, and almost to the point where I'm a little bit red-faced about it in the days of Dumbo. But like, that's just how I feel. It's an interesting pick. I'm not going to say shame on you, but it wasn't ever going to be on my list.
No, I didn't expect that.
On a completely side note, and this is like later Tim Burton, I think a scarier film is the one he made recently, is The School for Peculiar Children.
Right, Spedegrins.
Yeah, that movie itself, and that's kind of advertised as a kid's movie, but way more horror movie. And I was generally creeped out by it.
Right.
I think he's a Scorsese who's lost his De Niro in some ways. And right now he's trying to figure out, what is he doing? Am I going to do movies like Big Eyes, or am I going to do that?
I like Miss Pettigrew's School for Peculiar Children. I really, really liked it, and I was just surprised at the level of creepiness to that movie. Like, I found it actually creepier than Sleepy
And he
Hollow.
should lean into that. This whole, like,
let's go for it.
I can't get excited about you doing, the Alice in Wonderland. I can't get excited about.
He's got this contract with Disney or something. He must be getting mega bucks. But
remember when you were like this cutting edge, edgy, cool, dark filmmaker?
People didn't know how to take him.
He could not have sold out more completely. But I still want him to be the Tim Burton that I believed him to be. I got one more to list, and then we can stop it. When we record this, we're gonna have to get those kids. In 11th place, we've already talked about it, although we have an honorable mention. Again, Lee was talking about remakes. Okay, Zack Snyder's remake of Dawn of the Dead was way better than it had any fucking business being.
I agree.
And like, the stuff that they did right was by not trying to honor the original. And that sounds counterintuitive, but that's not how I feel. We got to stop this.
Yes.
It's gonna try to
riot happening here.
All right, so Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead, they managed to accomplish a lot by not stepping on the toes of the original. It's respectful, but it's also fun and energetic. The one that I kind of wanted to put on the list, but I couldn't honestly, and it's an honorable mention. Alexander Aja did the remake of The Hills Have Eyes, and it's fucking crazy. What? You're surprised? It's.
I know you like it.
It's
I
crazy.
That you like it. Yeah.
It's over the top, and it's super aggressive and in your face. And I get that it's not for everyone, but to me, that movie really does what it's trying to do, and that's how I measure the success of a movie. What were your goals, and did you meet them?
Yeah.
And I think that the remake of The Hills Have Eyes is a pretty fucking terrifying horror movie.
I have to sit here and shocked. Because we will talk this movie again, and
you're shocked that it's not on my list.
Yeah.
Okay. No, for me, I'm talking about remakes. These are two very fucking good remakes.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm agreeing with you. I'm just sort of surprised.
But I'm giving it to Dawn of the Dead because, again, I was really worried. Like, because I love Romero's Dawn of the Dead so much. I kind of want this remake, but I kind of don't want this remake.
Yeah.
But 28 Days Later had come out and sort of revitalized the fast zombie thing, and they really milked that. Yeah. And, it was a huge hit. It started the career of Zack Snyder and James Gunn. Like, Big fan. It was a tough choice.
It's a good choice. I kind of wish it was on my top 30 and maybe should have been, but I was struggling.
Color me surprised.
Sorry I didn't put Hills of Eyes on there.
No, it's your list.
That's my number 11. Boom. So there ends part 2, you guys. In 2 weeks, we will drop part 3, and we will list the top 10 movies, according to us, of the 2000s. Send your feedback to ranknreview@gmail.com, ranknreview@gmail.com. Check out the website at ranknreview.ca. And if you're having trouble with the waiting between episodes, check out the Terror Table podcast, because those guys know what they're doing. This is your host and random Canadian Larry Parsons saying thank you so much for listening. And sorry about the echo.